Alright, everybody. Hello and welcome to State of the Galaxy. This is episode 6. And for this episode, expect a lot of long discussion, because finally we got the expansion info drop we've all been waiting for. So to start us off, I'm going to give a brief overview of what we know about the expansion so far. It's called Shadow of Revan. There will be 5 additional levels, so we'll be hitting level 60. There are 2 planets, Rishi and Yavin 4. Yavin 4 is actually a moon. 2 new tactical flashpoints, 4 hard mode flashpoints, 2 ops with 10 bosses total. The discipline system, which will replace current skill trees. The story includes at least 1 class mission arc, which is exciting for the people who have been begging for that. The launch date is December 9th, and early access starts December 2nd. Now, panel, do you have a preference for whether we talk about lore or features first? Justin?
I kind of want to talk about lore a little bit.
Okay.
I love talking about lore. Let's talk about lore.
Okay. So, basically the lore is the Republican Empire versus the Revanites. So, Revan's a bad guy for, like, indeterminate reasons. We don't really know what his motivations are anymore. Because we know what his motivations are before, like he wanted to exterminate everybody with Sith ancestry. But now he's also against the Republic, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I guess he just went crazy.
Maybe he just went full-on genocide, though I'm wondering, I guess, this is what I'm really hoping is not going to happen, but at the same time, I have a feeling that it might. The Emperor is behind it all.
I hope that that's not the case, because that would be a big cop-out. Like,
It would be too easy for them to just say it's the Emperor.
Maybe
I know it's a cop-out, but if you think about it, it makes sense, because he needs all of the deads to make him strong.
Maybe he's upset that the Republic was trying to stop him instead of instantly joining his side and agreeing that he was right all along.
I'd be cool with it actually being Revan, and really, I'm not against the idea of it being the Emperor. The only problem I have with the whole Emperor thing is that it's an easy way for them to be like, we get to make Revan a bad until it actually matters, and then it's not that he was bad, it's that somebody was using him.
so that's what I'm wary of, especially because...
Has there been a single fucking time where Revan hasn't been used, though? Can we real talk right now?
Yeah, that's on basis that's true. My only thing is, it's just one of those situations where I would love for, since let's be real, Revan is kind of talked about in a Christ-like way in Star Wars. It would be nice if they could sort of turn that on its head and have him be more like the fallen one, like Lucifer, if we're really going to go down that route. And I think it's kind of not lazy, because they could still make it interesting. It's just, it's going to be telegraphed really hard if it's the Emperor.
Well, what personal style do you really want to play towards? That's the problem. I mean, you have the option of light and dark, and you know.
I'm not playing as Revan.
No. I'm saying, in the KOTOR series, you have the light and dark option, and do you try to take the lore towards the people that play the light side Revan, or take the lore towards the people that play dark
Light
side
side
Revan?
That's
is
moot.
canon.
Yeah, that's moot. It's Light Side Exile and Light Side Revan are canon. Like, that's been decided for us already.
Right, but you still have the future. I mean, it's not set in stone that the new Revan is going to always be light. It's that the past Revan was light.
Well,
But now are they going to play it towards the other side?
we can talk about that. Like, in the Foundry, he starts out using both sides of the Force, and as he starts losing, he starts using the dark side exclusively. Because I don't know, and this is my bias, he probably knows that it's better. At least in combat. Or he's just becoming unhinged. That could also be the case.
I mean, when he basically goes all Obi-Wan on you towards the end of the Flashpoint, where he is the penultimate boss of it or whatever, it's like, oh, he's being kind of dark, and then at the very end, you hear this quasi-Indiana Jones-like track, and everything sounds like it's going to be okay when he disappears, so it's, I don't know. They kind of go both ways with it.
You know I suffer from lore, but What is he? Who is he referring to when he's basically he's talking
friend.
about an old friend,
Malak.
and he's like my old friend.
He repeats
This is
Malek's
how you
dying
feel.
words. His friend was his apprentice Malak. When you kill
So he's-
Malak in the Starforge in
You know,
KOTOR
the
1,
guy,
he says those
you know,
words.
the guy with the big chin.
Yeah.
Right.
The great
But my
jaw
question
casing.
is
Great
how all of a
job,
sudden does Revan know how Malak felt? Because I thought
Because
Malak
Malak
was
said
never.
those words. Like, when you kill Malak, you are Revan, and Malak says those words before he dies.
Now I know how
Yes.
you felt.
No, as the darkness takes me, I am nothing.
Oh,
But that's what he meant. So, I could speculate as to his plan, right? And this ties into my biggest problem with the lore of this expansion. So he's on Yavin 4, right? So I don't know how Rishi ties into it, but that's a side point. Yavin 4 is tied into two Sith Lords, primarily. Naga Sadow, who fled there after the Great Hyperspace War 1,500 years ago, and Exar Kun, who made Yavin 4 his base of operations 400 or 500 years ago. Naga Sadow is not a going concern, as far as anybody knows. Like, his spirit or whatever has been, like, gone for a long time. Exar Kun's is not, because Exar Kun shows up 3,500 years from now in the future to harass Luke Skywalker and his apprentices. There had better be a very good reason, or rather, there had better be a very good explanation as to what Exar Kun's ghost is doing while all this is going on, because he's basically trapped on Yavin 4, specifically in those temples, just doing his own thing, going crazy over the course of 4,000 years by himself, except for now.
Other possible speculation, now that we're talking about Yavin 4, what are the chances that Revan is not being possessed or whatever by the Emperor, but instead being influenced and possessed by Exar Kun? Considering there's like... See, here's the thing. If you don't have Exar Kun into the lore of this expansion with Yavin 4, you're basically saying that even though SWTOR and the books and comics from which Exar Kun came are, even though they're legend canon, so like they're the same level of canon or not canon, however you depend on interpreting something like that, you're basically saying that you're going to ignore a lot of important canon, which means that at one level you're like, okay, that means they can be more do whatever the hell they want with the game, which sounds cool at first, but on another level, it sort of makes me wonder like what the point for establishing like the already pre-existing canon was when they made this game.
I would hope that they're smart enough not to just ignore the fact that this guy is supposed to be here. And it hasn't been long enough for him to go completely crazy, or to have diminished in strength by any appreciable amount, especially given what he did to reach the state he's in. And to clarify, part of the speculation about Revan that you might be correct about, that temple Revan's in the trailer, I think it was called in the Cantina Tour files the Temple of Sacrifice. That bears a striking resemblance to the temple that Exar Kun used when he sacrificed all of the Massassi to unleash his spirit. So maybe Revan wants to do the same thing, but like there's hardly any Massassi left. And it really begs the question of where the hell he got any Massassi. But that's whatever, beside the point. It may be that Revan wants to cause like a mass death of some kind so he can do the same thing and become like a super force ghost to fight the Emperor or whatever. But I don't know. None of his motivations make sense unless he's... I mean, they don't make sense yet. If he is being influenced, then yeah, that makes sense. But I hope that it's not so, I don't know. It's not
I think
weak.
the most
it's
likely
just,
explanation is he's being influenced by something. Unfortunately.
I guess.
Because I don't know.
This really
I
makes
guess
Revan into like the biggest gullible idiot in all of Star Wars, though. Like,
I know.
I mean,
but,
you make him
you
the Harry
can't-
Potter of Star Wars, basically. That's roughly what he
But
is.
here's the thing, because like people fucking love Jesus Revan, unfortunately, and like I don't think people would take too kindly to Jesus Revan being like fucking just totally ruined. But maybe that's just me.
Okay, question.
So
I'm not a
so
little
so
person,
if he's sort of being influenced, he's either the most gullible idiot in the world, but still is allowed to be Jesus, or he's not allowed to be Jesus. There's no in between, I think, at this point.
Lox, you had a question?
I don't know too much about lore, so my question is: are we going to be able to actually kill Revan at this, or does he
God, I
live
hope so.
on later?
I really hope so too, but
He's
I mean,
not part. He's not part of any established Legends canon in the extended universe past the point where we are in the game. There's like no book where it's like, oh, he's back. We've got the ghost of Revan, y'all. So
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay, so
what they do with
It's
this
possible that we
timeline
do
will
kill him.
define him.
unless they want to
What
save him for
is-
later again.
What is the justification for Revan's presence or attitude being so vastly different from Throundry to now?
We don't know. Like, there's no explanation.
I'm also going to be interested to see how, in the storyline, they tie together. Because as of now, we're not really working with the Republic. We're working with Theron Shan, who's sort of not. Is he still with SIS? or-
We're pretty much working with the Republic.
Yeah, if you
I mean,
look at
'cause
that
I'm
trailer where Mar and Satele are within 10-meter radius of each other without
not
killing
fighting.
each other,
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
we're
was
pretty
going to be
much
my next thing was I wonder how we're going to go from working with one person in the Republic to the leaders of both factions. Stepping out of a ship together. That's going to be an interesting
It means that
storyline.
Revan is such a big threat that they put aside the war. Which, I mean, that's happened in, like, WoW and stuff before. It hasn't happened in this
Yeah,
game,
just in
not really.
Pandaria.
It happened very briefly when Malgus made his coup attempt. Like you can see when you do Battle of Ilum, Imperial and Republic soldiers fighting side by side against new Imperials. But that lasted for all of one battle. This sounds like it's going to last for much of the expansion.
And I assume he's going to be the last boss of the expansion. Or at least one form of him. Maybe the final form of him will be the last.
Likely.
Revan Frieza from Dragon Ball Z, apparently.
Isn't even my final form.
He may not be, because I would expect there to be at least 2 tiers of content in this expansion, just like we had this last time. I mean, I guess he could be the final boss of this thing, and then like all of a sudden it's revealed that these other guys are the bigger threat or whatever. I don't know.
I would kind of
Grandmasters
prefer
are
it.
back.
I
Damn
would
it.
kind of prefer it if in the first tier, like instead of us, I know we have 10 bosses to choose from, but instead of us fighting and killing or whatevering Revan, it would be at least interesting if they either killed off Satele Shan by the end of the op or killed off Mar. I don't care which, but it'd be nice to have
No, you
some.
don't get to kill
No,
Mark. You
no
just
killing
No, no,
Mark.
shut
no,
your
no, no, no.
mouth.
See, no, no.
Don't
See,
give them
the
ideas.
reason why is I feel like too many characters outside of Malgus, and I never understood why they killed him so early. Why exactly everybody in the storyline with you is basically the ones they care about, because obviously some die, but it's just some of them seem quasi-invincible for reasons unknown. Like Satele Shan has stirred up enough shit to where she's basically pub-side version of Grand Moff Kilrin, and it's just like, have there not been serious like attempts? Like, why is there not an op where she is a boss? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Because they don't make bosses with Republic. Or they don't make ops with Republic
They
bosses.
should. It'd be
They should.
great.
I agree. That would be really nice to shoot at bosses that don't shoot lightning back for once.
Sure.
Well, that, and for me, the other thing is, just going off of how Star Wars sort of treats their own, like, factions, the Republic side already is a little bit full of zealots as it is right now. And it'd be nice if like there was a group in the Republic that decided, oh, they may be going too far, and then upon that you get like a quasi Order 66 going on, and then people just start saying, fuck it, we're going against the Republic because it's for the good of the galaxy. I'd like something like that. Because it's too easy to just make the Empire the bad of all things, because it's like, oh, we're racist against aliens, and oh, we've got slaves, and it's like, I don't know. I'm fine going Empire and Pub characters, but it just feels too obvious. I'd like a little bit of intrigue.
It's what I hate to bring this up, but it's what Alliance characters have felt in WoW alike a lot. All their heroes get turned either crazy, evil, or neutral, which is not cool and not fun. It's really it's also just really contrived.
And at least in the Star Wars movies, in Episode 3, you at least get to see the hypocrisy of the Republic and the hypocrisy of the Jedi, and like you get to notice certain things, and they don't exactly come out of it looking good. Whereas in this game, so far, overall, there's a whole lot of like, we are the Utopia, we're just trying to stave off this evil empire.
It's like the one and only time that you really hear about like the corruption that is all part of all things. It's like the Revan story. Revan rebelled and is corrupt, and then all of a sudden, instantly, he gets made a Jesus figure, and it's like that lasted all of like, hey, Revan was bad, Revan's good. Okay, we're good now, right?
Yep.
That is what I have the problem with. It's like there are corrupt people. I mean, the trade alliances that happen, the Hutts, all of these things are formed because of corruption and thirst for power. The thirst for power is part of the dark side, but it's also part of people. So there's two spectrums that I think tend to get ignored.
I mean,
Yeah, I agree.
the Republic's dark side has been displayed in this game already. Belsavis is like the biggest example. I mean, there are some pretty bad shit going on in Belsavis. I don't know if anybody remembers the Planetary Quests.
Yeah, there are bad things, but it's like bad things happening to overwhelmingly bad people by their
Sure.
own standards. Like, I would like it to be something where it's like they're overstepping their bounds and no longer just going for the obvious bads, and
Well,
they
like
just start
killing
doing like
Imperial women and children and shit.
no, because I mean like starting to take out targets who cannot even be like really said are even related to targets. Like, oh, this, like, you know how Revan was like, we're gonna take out any these droids will kill 99% of all Sith, blah blah blah. It's like, imagine if the Republic did something like that, where it's literally Space Hitler, where they're just like, oh, you're a Sith pureblood. Okay, well, regardless of the fact that we know nothing about you, we're just going to completely take out your race.
it wasn't,
Stuff like that.
It wasn't that, Justin. It was 99% of the Imperial population, which is not all Sith purebloods. It's like if you have any Sith ancestry, you're dead.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Good clarification.
I mean, that's like, I don't know, it's even worse in that he'll just kill a lot more people. So, yeah, I mean, as far as
Does
the
this
lore
mean that
goes,
there's not going to be any cross-faction PvP on Yavin 4?
I bet there will be. I don't know what it'll look like. I don't know if, like, they could make all of Yavin 4 a sanctuary, I guess.
Because,
I
like, in
don't think
Oricon,
that's
we're
likely.
not working together, so it makes sense that you can still kill each other. But if we're supposed to be buddies, even, like, not welcome bedmates, but still bedmates nonetheless, then it seems like they shouldn't allow us to kill each other.
See, I could go either way on that. We're on a PvP server, right? So
Mhm.
there are going to be some people who are going to get mad that they can't attack the other faction, and they don't know or care about the lore.
That's me. Sorry.
Yeah.
Just make whatever it's called. Make the leveling planet able, open world
I'm
PvP.
pretty sure both of them are the leveling planet. Like, I think you're going to spend half your time on Rishi and then the other half on Yavin.
Oh, I thought Yavin was going to be the opt planet.
I think it's not like Oricon. I'm pretty sure it's bigger than that. I don't know if they're both going to be as big as McKeb, but they are
Is it
going to be
going to be
bigger.
another? Are they going to finally use more of the doors in the fleet for these raids? Or
don't see why. I was never a big fan of like going to ops from the fleet.
I feel like the fleet is not maybe not being phased out, but maybe its importance is being reduced.
Yes. Strongholds was the beginning of that. Now we just need terminals, and then we can stop using the fleet at all.
I think they're going to try and keep at least a reason to keep the fleet up and a reason to keep you in your ship at times. No one wants to just get rid of their content that they've created.
Well, no. I mean, you use the hell out of the ship. Less so the fleet now, but you still have to go there for terminals, and like, not everybody has like a super decked out stronghold, so the people who don't will still go to the fleet. I mean, it's got its uses. It's not obsolete by any stretch. I don't think it'll ever be.
Well, almost all gear is still only obtainable on the fleet, so
But anyway, I think I've hit upon most of the lore points that I wanted to hit. Does anybody have anything to say about the lore? Such as we know so far. It's really cool that Darth Maul is actually going to fight something. I was pretty excited to see that.
Do you feel that they can ruin the game by messing up this lore? Or do you think you can ignore it and the game will continue regardless?
I mean, the most important thing about any game is, well, one, being able to fucking play it, and two, is the game fun to play? So, people will play the game as long as it's fun, and like, lore is important, and some people will get turned off if the lore sucks. I don't think it ruins the game on its own. Not for me, anyway. I'll get mad, yeah, but I'm not going to stop playing.
They'd have to really shit the bed to mess up the lore from a standpoint that would actually piss off Star Wars people, considering Star Wars people already have a tolerance for lore fuck-ups. So you'd really, really have to go hard in the paint.
Much to their shame.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody on lore? Because if not, we're gonna move on to gameplay.
Yeah, I think we're done with lore.
I did want to quickly touch on the pre-order features. All of them are whatever. Like the Grand Statue of Revan is whatever. Early access is great. That's always fine, but we expected that. We knew that was coming. The big pre-order feature everybody's excited about and has used the shit out of already is the 12x XP for class missions. I think that is a fantastic incentive. It's not just for pre-orders. You also have to be a subscriber, so that's really good for BioWare. It's pretty smart. I'm not the kind of person that like really enjoys leveling a whole lot anymore, and it actually got me to level my Sentinel from, I think I started when they introduced the buff. He was at like 22, and now he's max level. And I know several of you have finished up alts and started new ones and finished them too.
Yeah. Although I do
12x
think
XP
that
is luxurious.
it's beautiful, and I want to bask in its glory for all time.
The one thing they didn't do and that they should have done was increase the planetary comm intake. Because until you get to Makeb, it starts getting pretty difficult to take down some of these class missions.
Yeah, just because you're using level 22 greens at level 46 or something. The only problem that I had with the 12 XP was that it's pretty clear that the subscriber reward that they delayed the announcement for was 12 XP, and I love it, and I've leveled characters with it. I don't think that's something they needed to delay the announcement for. I still think that easily could have just said, we're going to have this awesome thing, and we'll tell you in the coming days or weeks.
I think so too. I can't imagine what the delay was for. I mean,
it was only a week though, right?
It was still like multiple times where we were told it will happen by this date, and then literally it was like, actually no. It's not that it was a week, it's the principle of them repeatedly updating us by saying it will be at this time and then just jumping it off a couple days later.
Yeah, I don't think that was something they could or should have delayed the announcement for. It doesn't sound like it. There had to have been something else.
I heard that it was something to do with the video that
I guess
that
that's
they
possible.
shot.
See, that's fine. The only problem is that's not what they told us at the time. At the time, they told us that there was a great perk they were working on and they couldn't finalize it. Like, if that wasn't the case, then you don't tell people that's the case. That's the communication thing is still my issue.
They could just say we don't
Yeah,
have all
BioWare can't like pull a Valve because people will take it from Valve, but they won't take it from BioWare.
They don't operate on.
All
time.
all I know is that if basically you need to subscribe for these 2 months, level all the characters you possibly could ever use of all time, you'll never have to do it again.
See, that's,
Unless once they will eventually bring out a new class, and then you'll have to level it. But other than that,
if they do that, I'm not so sure that they will, or if they do, it's gonna be later, I think.
I mean, because I see the problem with they'd have to do a whole new voice acting, 1 to 50 crap too with this new class, but
That segs nicely into our next topic, which is going to be gameplay changes, specifically disciplines, since that's what...
woohoo.
I'm kind of sad, RIP trees, but it's not a game breaker for me.
I'm not that sad. In fact, I'm pretty excited, because this can only be good.
Yeah, I'm excited too. There's not really a downside that I'm aware of outside of goodbye hybrid sniper, because every other hybrid was just stupid.
Every other... And the reason what we were talking about segues into this is yeah, you can level... You should level all your shit up right now. But even if you wait until after it goes away, your leveling experience is going to be so much better under the new system. Because no longer will they have to keep important talents out of your reach to kill hybrids. So, the reason why I like it is that it's just... it has to be insanely easier to balance. I mean, there's no way it's not.
Yeah, that's what I'm excited about, and I'm hoping that... I don't know, this isn't exclusive to say, to the way they're changing the talent system. It can happen with trees too, but I'm hoping that maybe we get some changes, like abilities working differently between PvP and PvE.
Yes.
Maybe. I don't know how likely that is. It's possible. There are some abilities that do that already, but they're pretty few and far between.
I know that they straight up said that cleansing will work for PvE and won't for PvP, so there is something to that. I just don't know if it's going to go beyond just that.
That was as far as I know, that's an off-the-cuff Cantina answer. We have to figure that. We probably want a more nitty-gritty what they mean by that answer.
Yeah.
Because it may just be that there's less debuffs to cleanse in PvE. Or they come less frequently to account for the longer cooldown on cleanses. I think they said it was going to be 12 seconds, which is pretty long.
Yeah.
Yeah, 12 seconds.
That was the tooltip for the sword cleanse, at least.
I do like that now the combat team, of which we now know there's at least one member, because we saw
have
him.
a face.
We saw him.
Combat team
There's a
exists.
video of him.
Yes.
The devs can make targeted changes to specific specs without worrying how it affects other specs. And that's really important. It means that low parsing specs will no longer have to suffer, because if they get buffed, it might buff a different spec and make it overpowered. I really enjoy that.
Also, I think that disciplines are going to, hypothetically, we don't know for sure yet, reduce the amount of class stacking we get in raids and class exclusion that we get in raids. Maybe not at the world first level, but at a level where it's okay, this group is doing hard modes, they want to do nightmare, but they have to class stack because they just have to have everything line up for them. I think that's going to change when you can have classes take utilities they couldn't take unless they went into a DPS deficient spec. And now that you can take those utilities into good DPS specs and you can have the best of both worlds, I think that's going to help.
I think that's a double-edged sword. I think if you have a group that struggles on easier content, they will have to make the exact same adjustments as a top-end raid would for certain reasons. Meaning, well, we may not have the best Sork or Assassin, but we have to have one because we need their raid buff. Meaning, you now cannot take 4 Maras as a top-end tier good guild good in clear hard mode. You are forced into saying, looking for 1 Sork or 1 Assassin DPS. Nobody else respond. I do not have a spot for you.
Let
So,
me
there-
let me check that. Hang on, because there might be that might not be so bad. It's yeah, okay. All of these new Bloodthirst effects, I think that's what you're referencing, right?
Yeah.
They only last for 10 seconds. So what does Bloodthirst last now? Is it also 10 seconds?
15.
No,
So-
they're dropping Bloodthirst down to 10. They actually said that in stream.
That makes it less crucial. I mean, marginally so, but still.
I know, but it's just throwing it out there. As in, when you look for a pub guild or a story mode guild that is attempting hard mode progression, those types of things, they have to factor in because it
Sure.
can help them.
It does help. I'm not saying it like as long as the person you're replacing does, or rather the person that you're introducing, who you're replacing somebody with, does as much or more damage, then yeah, having them and their cooldown is a net benefit to the raid. So I guess in a way that's like it's bad in a sense that you're going to have to get every buff.
They're also not going to be they're not going to be tied to DPS either, right? So if you have an op healer, they can use the agent one. Is that correct?
Yes, that specifically will not be tied to DPS.
Okay, so based on the current best healing comp, you already have Merc Op, so you have those two, and then you have the tanks as well, who might also be able to use them, so
Yes, I don't
that
think it's going
will
to be that
ease
bad.
the DPS, yeah.
No, but it is there and it is possible. And that's the things that I would probably want to get away from. I mean, there's no way that I want to, hey, look, I'm a best in slot jug tank, let me go. And they're like, oh, well, we really want a Sin tank because we don't have a DPS one in the raid or something like that because we want that buff.
Well, I like Rom said, I don't think for a 10-second thing you can only use every 5 minutes that's really going to be a serious factor for most
Yeah.
people.
There's
Also, those people that are going to have that view, they were the same people that made sure there was a Marauder or a Sniper in their raid for Ballistic Shield or Bloodthirst. Those people are not people you can balance around because they're just going to do stuff like that anyways.
I agree with you. I'm
The other
just
thing
saying that
is-
that is a thing.
Yeah, of course.
we don't know what kind of we only know what kind of utility Sorks are going to be bringing so far, because we got a pretty good detailed view on Tuesday, I think it was. Let's see. As you guys mentioned, Death to Hybrids, which is great for PvE and PvP. I think I would especially say PvP, so you'll no longer have people who are functionally healers queued as DPS, or who are functionally tanks also queued as DPS, or vice versa.
Also,
One thing-
I have a wonder on the Bloodthirst thing. Since all of the classes are going to have their own version, I wonder if they're going to change Bloodthirst not just from the 15 seconds to 10 seconds, but also make it not require 30 stacks, since other classes don't even have a 30 stack mechanism for their class.
I would wager that they would. I bet you they remove that requirement.
That would make it better, because at the moment it's like, am I using 30 stacks on Berserk or Bloodthirst, as opposed
Right.
to just it being off the global and me being able to use my 30 stacks on Predation or Berserk.
It seems to me like the best way to use these is to just pop them all at once.
Agreed.
But the worst one on its own has to be the crit one, because it's RNG. The other ones will just flatly always increase everything you do. Whereas the crit one, you could have a chance and just get unlucky.
Doesn't actually Alacrity really screw with Pyrospec?
Alacrity this is another thing I want to talk about. Alacrity is going to be amazing. Well, assuming per point that it's worth a shit, which may not be the case, but hopefully is. Alacrity is going to affect dot tick speed in addition to cooldowns, which is really exciting. So the reason you can't use Alacrity as lethality sniper, other than the fact that it's worthless in a per point basis, is because your cooldowns don't change. So you're going to get as many calls, and yeah, the calls will be faster, but you won't get more of them because it's on a cooldown. But since Alacrity will affect cooldowns, it's going to be great. And that's that's way more interesting gearing decision between, okay, how much power do I have? All right, I'm going to get this much crit, because now you have a third stat to like manage. In that vein, on my wish list is I really wish they would just get rid of accuracy, because it's a stupid, boring stat.
Agreed. It was
It's
so much
really
better when Sorks didn't have to use accuracy.
It's just a hurdle you have to jump through to participate in in-game content. It's not
I feel like-
meaningful.
I feel like if they make Alacrity matter, then I'm fine getting rid of accuracy.
Yes.
But like, because Alacrity, unless you were a healer where accuracy didn't matter, except for like Sorks that ran 2 Alacrity pieces, Alacrity was just something that was a hurdle to you getting out of your gear. So if Alacrity actually matters, if you took accuracy out, you would still have the same number of stats that mattered when you're gearing a character.
Yeah, that's the thing. There will always be a stat that you have to have, and, you know, it just depends.
That's not. I mean, yes, you have to have stats, but like, there's no reason accuracy has to be one of them.
There's only one downside I see to removing accuracy. It would imbalance Mercs versus Mandos.
And I know
because then
accuracy
you'd
is
be
an
hitting
unfun
100%
stat to
with your
stat.
offhand.
It would not. I mean, Dom, you just rebalance the offhand damage to compensate. It's not a big deal. Or you buff the freaking cannon.
So you're
It's not
saying
a
I
big
should
deal.
switch to my Mando.
If you want to raid pub side, go ahead.
Sure.
What is your purpose of accuracy being wasted? In my opinion, you have
It's
a
just a
maximum
fucking-
number of stats, right?
Yeah.
So if they give you a minimum requirement to hit in one stat, it means that you do not scale as well in DPS, even with any stat gain until you hit that. So it is a way to make you balance your stats in a scaling way, or it is a way to pull away from possible top damage, to keep damage lower until a certain amount of gear is hit.
If they want to pull away from top damage, they can just give you less stats and not make you hit this stupid arbitrary number of accuracy in order to
It's not
participate
interesting.
meaningfully. It
I
really is not
agree with that.
interesting.
I agree with that, but when you start, a lot of people that say they want to get rid of accuracy, in their head they think, well, if I can have 400 more points
I'm
into a
not s-
DPS
No,
stat,
No,
I'm
I'm
not
not
saying
thinking
it.
that.
So like, I'm not like getting a hard on, like thinking, oh, I could do so much more DPS. I'm saying it would be a lot more fun not to have to worry about stupid accuracy. Also,
Also,
it helps tanks.
coming
Yes,
from a
it would help-
tank, to me
it would
that
help
would be the
tanks.
greatest thing in the world. I mean, you guys know how upset I get when I miss 3 abilities in a row. I want to fucking smash my keyboard against
Yeah.
the wall. Because it's like, well, I'm worthless for like 10 seconds. You literally have to do the fight without me for a while. So, while it is a big thing to me, you know, I'm just trying to play the other side here and say, well, that I don't think that you can get one without the other. I think if you lose accuracy, there must be a counterbalance to it somehow, some way.
Speaking
I
of
mean, that
stat
counterbalance
changes,
Hold on. That counterbalance is the change to make alacrity and other neglected stats more attractive, so that people have interesting decisions to make. Do I get crit? Do I get power? Do I get alacrity? Stuff like that.
Yeah,
Also,
and I think it's
I-
going to go... Go ahead, Justin.
I was just gonna say that, like, if alacrity is important enough to where DPS classes are taking it, and because they've said in the forums that they're going in the future, they're going to work away from just giving DPS classes this stupid buff because it hasn't scaled well with tanks. I imagine that if you took accuracy out, your threat's going to be better in general, and if they're not going to be over buffing every class, it may be a situation where, like, tanks they're sort of more on even footing, because right now it feels like out of the 3 classes, tanks are in the least equitable situation overall.
That's
Yes.
almost every MMO, because as DPS scales, threat scales at a lower level. So at the start of a content tier, tanks have the best advantage for threat when a new expansion drops. And as the expansion progresses, DPS scales at a much higher percentage than threat scales, and there's no way to fix that. And that's why, you know, That's, to me, is the biggest problem that happens is, yeah, as a Jug, you can have no gear when, SNV TFB dropped and still do plenty of threat. When Palace Nightmare dropped, it didn't matter how much gear you had, the DPS are going to be able to pull regardless of what they do. I don't think you can get rid of that, no matter what you do, unless you add some kind of stat that messes with your threat gen.
Go ahead.
Speaking of stats, I noticed something rather interesting in the Sork tree.
Yes.
There's no longer the increased main stat
I think that's just
So-
being gotten rid of across the board.
across the board. Okay, because currently it's in the lightning. Wait, is it in the? No, it's in the
No,
madness
it's
tree,
madness.
and it's not. It was not any of the utility abilities that they showed us. It wasn't any of them. So
You're right. I did notice that too. I think no class is going to have a main stat buff. Because right
It's just
now
gonna
it's
be
just
one of those
uneven
things
anyway.
that gets trimmed from the trees
It's not an
because it
interesting
doesn't really need to be there. Yeah, exactly. Probably the same with some of the damage reduction, or it'll be rolled into another talent.
What I also didn't notice is that there's no accuracy thing, which makes me cross my fingers and hope that there's no accuracy at all. But more likely, it was probably just in one of the earlier talents, and I just didn't see it.
Yeah, it'll just get rolled into something else.
Or you just get it for picking lightning, or picking madness, or picking
Yeah.
whatever. Okay, like I said earlier, disciplines are going to be in a smoother leveling experience. What this also is good for is, I think people are going to maybe, I'm crossing my fingers and being a serious optimist here, I'm hoping that people leveling new characters are going to learn how to play their characters a lot more effectively thanks to this. I think there's an argument to be made. Because,
it could
because
help out,
like,
but,
look,
yeah.
you're getting, Thundering Blast at like level 26 or something as a sorcerer now. Whereas before, at that level, you have Chain Lightning, and that's it. And you got Chain Lightning at like level 10. So you're going to have like a lot of your toolkit a lot earlier, and you're going to learn what's effective as you level. Assuming you're not like stupid.
I still think it's funny that they give you Chain Lightning and then you have to wait like 4 or 6 levels before they give you the instant proc, meaning either people aren't going to be using Chain Lightning until level 16 anyways, or they're just going to be actually hard casting.
Yeah.
You pull with it. You pull trash with it. That's it.
Yeah, you definitely pull with it. Also, you don't have Force Storm yet. You don't get that until like the 30s, unless they change it. So that's going to be your big AoE until Force Storm. And by then you'll have the proc anyway, so you'll use both Force Storm and Chain Lightning. So that's pretty exciting. What else? Utilities. We can talk about that. There are a lot more.
Before we go to utility,
Go ahead.
I wanted to bring up Alacrity in a little bit more functional basis.
Sure.
Everyone enjoys the idea that, you get quicker cooldowns, your dots tick quicker. To me, in my mind, it's an amazing thing. Hell, I was even joking the other day that you could stack Alacrity as a tank and just taunt spam with no GCD. But to me, it's still going to be putting us in the same boat we are now, which is you must have, as a say currently as a Madness Sin, in order to get certain things within certain windows or to have certain timings line up, you must have exactly this much Alacrity. If you cannot get exactly this much Alacrity, you must have at least this much amount until you can hit that Alacrity. So then you have stuff sitting in your bags waiting for things and stats to line up. Do you guys feel that will happen? Because I can't see it not happening.
I think that
there's
it
gonna
already happens,
Yeah.
and it's how you gear for it. Like I remember CAC geared his I know it's a healer, but bear with me. He geared his Merc healer for DP around the concept of how long it was either healing scan or rapid scan took him to cast during the Raptus healing challenge. I know that there was not many Marauders used it, but there was a thing at one point where you geared your Marauder or your Sentinel when using Carnage around using 3 Alacrity pieces to try and get another ability into a gore window, and almost nobody used it, but it did actually work. The only problem is you had to change your rotation based around the exact number of Alacrity you had. So it's happening at small levels, so I wouldn't be surprised if it happened at larger levels in the future.
But do you think that
That's
is a
gonna-
good or a bad thing
I think
to
it's good.
force someone
I
into
think
that?
it's good. I think it's good.
There are going to be thresholds, Tiggs. Like in WoW, there are like haste thresholds where you're supposed to get X amount, and then per point after that, you don't get as much benefit until you get way more.
Uh huh.
I think that's interesting.
That's where
That-
my mindset comes from, because
I
I'm
think
used to
that's
this
interesting.
happening. And I was
Also-
wondering if you guys feel that's a good or bad, and you guys
think
said
it's
Well,
good.
the reason that I think it's good is that lately what they've been doing is they've been making the rotations in PvE and PvP more manageable, and they're taking RNG out of it, and I feel like that could be a prelude to the fact that Alacrity will at some level change their rotation from something that's static and has no deviation. Like I know that Madness Orcs have been not a fan of that 4th stack of Wrath, and I just feel like maybe that's a prelude to the fact that Alacrity is going to impact that rotation. That's just a thought, and it's optimistic.
It will.
but-
The other reason why they changed it is because it's so counterintuitive to stop your Chain Lightning cast, and that makes you do more damage. Like from a game design perspective, that shouldn't be the case. And I know
Which I agree.
it is technically, yes, you're displaying greater knowledge of your class when you do it, and it is correct to do, but it shouldn't be correct to do. Because it's not something that somebody could come to without the aid of like people who know what they're doing, or like a parsing tool and like experimentation.
I was a little upset at first when I read that I don't know, it just seemed like it was going to make my rotation, not more boring, because it's only really one tick. It's like one GCD, even that. But I don't know. I guess the only thing that I am still sad about is that it's gonna basically, if they change anything, it's gonna give me infinite force, just like lightning, and that was kind of an interesting thing about Madden. It's not like something I'm heartbroken about, but it's just gonna be. I'm gonna have infinite force now, like I'm playing lightning.
You're generally not supposed to run out of force. Pretty sure they don't want you.
Yeah, well, it's very difficult to run out of force as badness, but
Yes.
it is something you can do if you're not being somewhat careful, especially if you're multi-dotting.
Like
I'm
other...
trying to
Go ahead.
prevent myself from getting into that mindset of, oh, that's going to mess up my rotation. I'm trying to think of 3.0 as in, wipe the chalkboard, start
It is.
over again, figure out a new rotation, because I feel that rotations are not similar in 3.0 as they are currently. And so I'm trying to keep myself from going, oh, that alacrity is going to mess with this, or, ooh, that accuracy will mess with this. And I'm going to say, okay, I need to go set it a dummy and even figure out what is a rotation, because it may
Exactly.
be 0 compared to what it is now.
No, it is the wrong mindset to think, oh my god, what I'm doing right now is going to not work anymore. I mean, you should get used to that. And there's a reason you should get used to that. It's because it helps the game to change shit like that.
And they said that the classes you will be playing in 3.0 are, he said, Musco, I think, said going to be at 90% identical to the ones you're playing now. So it's not like you're going to log on and it's going to be in it something you've never seen before.
Yeah, it's going to be mostly the same, but hopefully different enough to keep people's interests. Because like I said earlier, the game being fun to play is the second most important thing about any game. If it's not fun to do your rotation because it's so stale because you've been doing it for years, you're very unlikely to continue playing. At least that's how it is for me. Let's see. I want to talk about utilities real quick. They're a lot more flexible than I thought they'd be. It's the system works on like a tiering scale. If anybody watched the stream on Tuesday, it looks like you could either get, was it 7 points? Do you have 7 points total or 5?
It's
7 at 60.
7. So there's 7 points. There's like 5 per tier, I want to say. Was it
7 in the bottom tier, because he showed you just put all of it in
maybe
the bottom
maybe
tier.
it is 7 per tier. So you could spend every single damn point in the first tier, but the first tier has all the weakest looking utilities. But you have to get at least like 2 of them, I think, to advance to the next tier.
It's 3.
3. The way it ends up is you can get a maximum of 2 top tier talents. Or utilities, I should say. Which is fine, because they all seem really, really good. Like, the Sork cast while moving talent is in that tier, in addition to their, like, 30% damage reduction while stunned, which is pretty important for PvP.
Yeah, I was shocked at how many of the utility ability. I guess I shouldn't have been, but it seemed like there was, for the Sork at least, that 2/3 of them seemed to be very PvP focused
I think that's probably
by
good.
design.
Yeah. And honestly, some of them aren't all that PvP focused. Like, that damage reduction while stunned, you could use that during, like, Brontis, because she stuns the shit out of you while she's attacking you. So every time she lifts you, you take less damage.
Which is the only time you should be taking damage.
Yeah. Well, you take damage from orbs while they're passive
Well,
on you, and
outside of-
AoE.
And 6-finger fade. But yeah, in general.
But there's also shit like that corrupted barrier talent. That's also in the last tier, and that thing got buffed too, and it's really good.
Is that the stun bubble?
No, that's backlash. God, I'm gonna fucking... That's gonna drive me nuts that every Sork is gonna have that. The corrupted barrier is the one that heals you while you have static barrier and, like, force barrier up. And it heals you for quite a bit, actually, in
Yeah.
pretty rapid succession.
And the longer you channel, the more it heals you.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's going to be like a mixture of Pally Bubble plus Evocate?
Yeah.
I guess.
I gotcha.
I did notice that there weren't any active utilities. Like, they were all passives.
hmm
Which I assume that since we saw none for Sorks, there's probably none for anybody, so that's a little disappointing. I think there's room for active utility points. Maybe next time they add... next time we go up another 5 levels or whatever, the final tier can have actives. That would be cool. More buttons to press is good.
Would you consider the actives as needing to be non-GCD'd or GCD'd?
It depends on what they do. Like, some of them could be off the GCD. It all depends on how powerful they are. Let's see. Anybody else have anything to say about utilities? Like, you can also go into specifics. Like Lox, I know Sork is your class, and you can talk about that.
I think we've covered it pretty well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, obviously that one ability. I assume all utility trees are going to have something like the move while you do something, or something that equally cool and awesome. Because I mean, that's basically going to be a mandatory ability for a lot of the fight. And I do worry that there's going to be some of the abilities and some of the tiers are just going to be filler abilities so you can get to the top, but which is basically what you do with skill trees now. But
The first tier I could see being that way, because but honestly, I didn't see any of them that were like particularly horrible, except for that one that affects consumption. But that's only because it seems like they don't know what to do with consumption.
I think that healer one right now. Maybe not.
Okay, so if we're done with utilities, I did want to get on my soapbox and like make a public statement that if you think the utility system, or rather the discipline system, is dumbing down the game, that's just wrong. There's nothing particularly skillful about the current skill system. There are right and wrong ways to spec, and if you spec the wrong way, you're just worse. And it's basically, do you know what you're doing? Which, that's all an MMO is, really. Do you know what you're doing? But it's not like a way to check if you know what you're doing. It's a knowledge check, and, I mean, you're not any smarter for speccing the right way than anybody else. Most people just do the cookie cutter anyway. And honestly, if you're worried about people who are bad now getting better, you shouldn't be, because people who are bad now getting better is good for the game. We want the player base to generally increase in skill, and if they increase in skill even marginally because they can no longer spec the wrong way, that's good.
Just need to learn them how to press them buttons. I'm getting tired of seeing 8.5k Marauder damage.
See, that's the kind of bad player who's just never going to get, like, this change will not affect him at all. I mean, not in any appreciable way. And Miles, I was not talking to you. This is it's a PSA. I don't think does anybody have any commentary on that? I think it's pretty non-controversial.
I like disciplines, and I don't honestly. If when they say they're making things easier, I feel like changes to lack of RNG is what's going to make things easier, and not necessarily the fact that we're no longer doing skill trees. Because for all the talk of, I'm not going to be able to like make decisions, it's like the only decisions that you made was, for this fight I will spec into X utility of 30% damage reduction, and for this next fight there's not enough AoE damage reduction, so I won't take it. Like, you can still do that. There are not that many spec differences for classes in PvE or PvP, with exception to hybrids, and since they're killing hybrids, you can't even really talk about it in the same breath. Like, it will not change how I'm going to spec as Annihilation or as Carnage. It's just going to change the manner in which I spec. Like, I'm pressing 7 buttons to make the decision, instead of I'm pressing every button for every skill point I have.
Yes. And honestly, I like that. As far as quality of life goes, I like that better anyway. The only thing that I'm going to be concerned about is the more powerful variants of skills that you're going to get as part of your trees, because it looks like there's definitely probably going to be at least one per spec. I guess I didn't see one for Corruption Sorcerer, the healing tree. It didn't look like there was one there. But for others, it looks like there's going to be a lot more ability dragging on my bar, which I'm not all that excited about, but it's not a huge deal.
I mean, for Madness, you can just take off. Like, it looks like it's going to be the exact same buttons. You just take off Crushing Darkness and put Demolish on.
Yes. But, like, again, that's just more dragging. So, I don't know.
It looks like Lightning is actually going to have more than it currently does, which is interesting.
More what?
I think at least one more ability than it currently does.
Yes, it's supposed to. They said that as part of it. I mean, they said that was intentional. If you don't have, like... I think every tree now has, like, 3 actives, except for a few, and the ones that don't have 3 actives are getting an extra active. So yeah, that's why. Let's see. Stepping away from disciplines, there's a lot more utility spread around the classes. For example, that we saw on stream, we see sorts of both damage persuasions can apply a 5% weakness to force attacks, and it's pretty safe to assume assassins are also going to do that. It's also very likely tech classes are going to be able to apply some kind of tech weakness, whether that's power techs, or rather, whether that's bounty hunters or agents, is yet to be seen. I don't think it really matters which one does it. We also saw there was an AoE damage vulnerability debuff that could be applied by, I think it was Chain Lightning and Deathfield.
Mm-hmm.
That's general enough that it's safe to assume other classes can apply it.
Which that is really interesting in itself. I wonder if that means we're going to be in for more Grobthok-like fights with just ads all the time.
I'm not sure that it was specific to, like, if they wanted to make us do more AoE damage just to fix a spec or for a specific fight, they would have just increased the numbers of every AoE ability.
I want the fights to hopefully not be so like persistent about tanks losing control of the character. I'd like for there to be actual mechanics as opposed to you lose your character's like ability to move around for a few seconds.
I'm a tank. I'm okay with it, but my version of tank is different than other people's versions of tank.
Well, we don't really like the taking people out of the fight type of mechanic because they've done it multiple times. Every tier, it seems. So.
There's an argument to be made that they've just overdone it.
Oh, I agree. I mean, Soa is one. I mean, just so many fights in Styrak, Council.
Yeah, there's
So,
one
much, so many fights just take you out,
in
basically.
I have
practically
this.
every fight.
I have the problem when it doesn't work as intended. For example, our council with my sin, what was it, 2 weeks ago?
Yes.
It was getting really frustrating, and it wasn't that I was losing control of my character. It was that the game's mechanics were not working as intended and killing us because, you know, I had good RNG, which should be a positive thing as a tank, not a negative thing. Those are the ones that upset me, not the, oh, I got knocked back and I can't move for 2 seconds because I'm in the air type of things. If anything, it forces you not to be able to just guarantee that at what second this is exactly going to happen. It adds a little bit more, okay, this happened to this tank. The other tank now actually is no longer an off tank. He has to step into the role of main tank because, you know, BioWare is pretty good about making sure both tanks have roles to do in Nightmare content.
Yeah, in one sense that's like limiting though, as far as
Well,
creativity goes.
It used to not be that way. The first... When was it? I mean, in like KPEV, there were fights that didn't need 2 tanks, but I think ever since EC, pretty much every boss has required 2 tanks. So that would be interesting, I suppose, if you could drop down a tank. Although
I
then
think-
you'd have to think, would they balance the fight around you having 5 DPS? And so
I think
the
having
tank...
additional mechanics
That's what we did in Gromp
instead of
or not
having
Gromp
just
Texas.
instead of just having character control loss, having additional tank mechanics makes my gameplay so much better. So I'm all for that. I'm not one that's saying never ever make me lose control of my character. The more things for me to do, the better.
Yeah, and when you lose control of your character, you're not doing anything. Like, when I get SOA'd on Council on my sniper, I just sit there and wait.
I'm okay with loss of control for tanks, at least, being something that's a negative result of you doing something wrong.
Yes.
That I'm
I mean,
perfectly
that
okay with that. But
that
if
is actually the way it is on Council.
that as a mechanic is just like, well, we didn't have anything else to do, so let's throw tanks on the ground for 5 seconds, or knock them up in the air just cause.
Let's see. Going back to the debuffs we were talking about, I kind of hope that the utility that they seem to be wanting to spread around multiple classes, I hope that's not just limited to debuffs. I also hope that those talented abilities that you saw as part of the discipline tree, like what was the new one for lightning? Was it that instant cast thing? I hope that's not the only new ability we're getting. I hope that there's like an actual trained ability, just like Hut Cartel, with a like I guess for the Sork example,
yeah.
barrier, something that all Sorks get. And I kind of hope they're like a lot of them are utility.
Yeah, that's interesting because it gives you something else to do.
Yes.
Demolish isn't really... Demolish is literally... It's not a new ability. It's Crushing Darkness with another name. So you're just going to take Crushing Darkness off your bar and put Demolish on it.
Yes.
It looked
Just
amazing.
addressing the Lady Thor's comment.
It looked amazing though. I love that animation.
It looks cool. Yeah. Also, Lightning Bolt looks fucking cool. Looks way better than Lightning Strike. So that's a good thing. If they're going to start replacing abilities, at least the replacements will look cooler.
But
And I
we
like-
could
care
get
about that.
green lightning.
That's not going to happen.
Black lightning.
But no, what
Red lightning
I'm
or-
getting at is I want additional utility not to be limited to just debuffing the mob to take more damage. It should be stuff like that's interesting, like Intercede and Ballistic Shield. Those are cool abilities that have a lot of use, like Extricate. And they need to spread that around more classes so that there's reason to take them for situational use. Okay, what else? They told us set bonuses are changing. They didn't tell us how, but I'm pretty excited about that because as far as snipers go, snipers
Anything is
have
better.
a fucking boring set bonus for both PvP and PvE. They're just boring as shit. So hopefully set bonuses start getting interesting, and my other part of this wish list is I hope set bonuses change every tier. Because go ahead.
Go ahead.
No,
I don't know if I want set bonuses to replace every tier. What I'd like instead is for set bonuses to be adaptive to what spec you're in. I'd rather there be a per spec set bonus as opposed to a new tier, new set bonus.
There's a really easy way to do that with the new system. Like, I'm gonna like throw out a sniper one, and this is just very basic and completely not balanced. I'm just gonna throw out a very basic set bonus, like 2-piece, increases the damage of your interrogation probe, corrosive grenade, and follow through by 5%. Now that's very boring, but that's like an easy way to like make it spec specific. But you don't necessarily have to do that. And that's probably a lot less difficult to code technically than making the bonus change on the item when you change a spec.
The problem I have, and I think this is because I feel that you're almost counterintuiting balancing what you were talking about later, is the more you take away from someone being able to spec wrong or gear wrong is better for the community, is almost what you said earlier. If you make things change from tier to tier, you will have things happen like happened in WoW. You must use this 2-piece and that 2-piece, which means you're wearing previous gear to combine specific sets. And if you remember, at one point they completely broke the game when they allowed Holy Paladins to have a instant cast full heal for no mana. That type of thing, I
That kind
think
of
you
thing
open
gets
yourself up
fixed.
for.
At least in WoW, and if you want to be skeptical of BioWare, that's fine. That's fair. At least in WoW, that kind of thing got fixed very quickly, especially when people were keeping old set bonuses instead of getting new ones.
But I don't want old and new set bonus combining to be the right way to play.
Like
Well,
I
you
said,
just-
usually that gets addressed pretty quickly.
And you could also just tie the good part of the set bonus to the 4-piece, so that wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it gets fixed, but like I said, it creates problems.
Like they fixed
And
that.
I'm more for not creating problems.
They fixed that with respect to the sniper 4-piece in PvP because people were wearing the 2-piece because it gave you an extra tick of orbital, and this is before the orbital nerf too, so it was always worth taking. They just moved it to the 4-piece, and the other thing is like your stats were pretty gimped wearing two shitty armor rings.
Yeah, and I agree, and I know they did that. I'm just saying I would prefer if those aren't options.
I mean,
Well, perfect world, you know.
yeah. I mean,
Oh, sure.
I
This is
would
coming
rather
from an
have.
idea.
I would rather have the more interesting. Like, at least my set bonuses will be different this tier, and it will be fun to play.
Yeah.
Perspective. But yeah, I mean, there is concern that people will start doing that, and that is almost guaranteed to happen. But I'm being optimistic and hoping they fix it soon.
That's part of the PTS testing they're going to do too. Hopefully they find stuff like that out.
Well, I don't think that's going to be part of the PTS because I don't think we're getting more than one tier of gear. I mean, maybe they were going to get like an Arcanian type thing and an Underworld, which was what happened in Hut Cartel, but they didn't have different set bonuses.
I assume the set bonuses, if they change, are going to be tier based. So Arcanian, Ult, whatever, Underworld are probably gonna, whatever the equivalent is gonna have the same because it's from the same tier.
Maybe. And yeah,
They
I
said
mean,
level 55
yeah.
bonuses would be the same, so they're not
If it's-
changing those.
no, yeah, we know that. That's not what he's saying. The equivalent of what we're going to get in 3.0.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
the
like whatever the level 60 entry level tier of set bonus gear is, that should be at the updated one, shouldn't it?
yeah the story mode and the hard mode of the two new ops is probably going to be the same, and most likely, I mean, that would be interesting if you did different set bonuses for Nightmare, considering they don't come out at the same time, and it's obviously much harder. But I don't know. Then
They said no in their stream. I remember that. But
Right.
they did mention that you can use, and you can always use the old set bonuses. And my question, are they going to make it to where you update it so they're always current and you have multiple set options, or is it, well, if it's that good, you can still wear the old two-piece?
Well, one, they've had color crystals have had the exact same stat for forever, for the intention that you can switch between them at any point in time. So they've been willing to do that. But also, eventually, I mean, especially with the tier, a whole new expansion happening, there's probably going to be a significant stat difference between our current Nightmare armorings with the tier pieces and, the next 3.0 raids. There's probably going to be a big difference.
I don't know, man. They didn't really have a big difference in the last one.
Do you mean as far as stats go between Dreadguard and
stat.
Underworld? It was pretty big.
Well, Dreadguard and Arcanian.
I mean, Arcanian was whatever. It was still better to wear Arcanian, but like Underworld was a hell of a lot more stats than Dreadguard.
Dreadguard to Arcanian is kind of like if you tried to compare Dragon to like Oriconian or something. I don't know, Arcanian and Dreadguard,
Yeah.
that's pretty far away. That's story mode to Nightmare previous tier.
That
Yeah.
was like, what?
You-
72 main stat to 81?
You
I don't
you
know
may
off the top
want
of my
to
head.
you may want to compare something like Arcanian to like, I don't know, Rakata.
I don't know about that.
I mean,
I don't think Arcanian was put there as a way to upgrade your gear. I think it was a way to get there for gear that you didn't previously have.
assuming things go the way they did last time, I expect to be wearing my Dreadmaster gear until we get the hard mode gear from the two new ops.
agreed, because I mean, as for instance, as I think wasn't Mox was around for 2.0, I think, and they cleared whatever. But anyways, they cleared hard mode Golden Fury or whatever, like the day after the expansion came out. So Arcanian was not meant to be significantly better. So whatever the equivalent of that is going to be in this new expansion is not going to be significantly better.
You'll still wear it though if you win it, but you're not going to go out of your way to like go get it.
Unless it looks cool.
I was
That's
wearing
also a
Rakata
possibility.
whenever Mox cleared stuff. Because I had changed from Merc to Mara.
Okay. Anything else on gearing, set bonuses?
It looks like at least one of the tiers is going to be called Revenite, which
Yes.
the gear, which I don't know about that. It's probably going to look hideous.
I mean, you see those soldiers in the preview? I'm guessing that's going to be like a Sith warrior set.
So ugly.
Want to wear stupid stuff.
I mean, whatever, you don't have to
Give
wear
me
it.
give me the bad hats. Let's go.
Pirate hats.
Some people will like it, so
I'm
they will wear it.
want
Yep.
that.
People wear the Oriconian sets. Like, I remember when those came out, we thought they looked cool, and then like none of us ended up really wearing them.
People still wear Karaga's helm.
Karaga's hat's still best hat in game. Fight me IRL.
I mean, it is the flared condom hat.
Let's see. I guess my summary for this whole topic is like sweeping class changes and changes to basic combat mechanics keep the game fresh. So already this is going to be loads better than Hut Cartel, which is already pretty good. I mean, I was happy with Hut Cartel, except for Secret Droid and Macro Binoculars, just because that content has no longevity. It was fun the first time, but I'm hoping that they don't do anything like that for 3.0.
If they're gonna
I
make
still
it
haven't even
just
touched
the
it.
end quest, they can't make it a heroic 4,
Yeah.
or they have to make it repeatable. because otherwise nobody will ever do it past the first week. You'll never get to do it on your alts.
I never got to do it because of that,
Yeah,
I
I've
have-
never done
I
it
have
either.
and I've
High
never
five.
even seen it.
That's fucked up. I thought everybody had done it like once,
Because I
and then
didn't
they
do it
stopped.
first week.
I was not here for it, which is why I missed it.
All right. We did see in the new ops there's going to be enough bosses to drop a full gear set, and the minimum is 10. I would like the loot distribution to make sense. And beyond like belts and bracers need to drop on a consistent basis. That means like in 8-man it should really be 2 relics and 2 implants should drop every time from whatever bosses drop them.
Yeah, there's no reason a piece of gear should take twice as long to gear as any other piece.
Yeah. It's like, because under the current system, you have to kill those specific bosses twice as many times to gear out a character. And that's
And since
silly.
it's always the entry level bosses, it's not like an interesting boss. You can just go in there, kill the first one, and be done with it.
I mean, that's different every tier. Like, it was Dread Guards for Kill Dragon.
That's talking about too. That's talking about the Nightmare tier where they're guaranteed drops. It's even worse in hard mode where they're not even guaranteed drops.
Yeah.
But in hard
Well,
mode,
I mean, I hope they
the
like
bracers
learn their
and
lesson
whatever
about that.
were right.
I would assume they're not gonna do that crap again.
I fucking hope so, because that would be really dumb. There's not much to talk about, like, how many bosses there are, so that's, like, just a side point. We know hard mode flashpoints. We don't actually know this, but it's very likely just going to be Forge Alliances, because there's 4 hard mode flashpoints, and Forge Alliances is 4 flashpoints. And
I'm
it's-
alright
and
with
it's
I enjoyed them.
yeah, I mean, it's tied into the story, so it makes sense that those would be it. Still want Red Reaper.
Red Reaper would be great. That's one of my favorite flashpoints in the game.
I
Not
like that
gonna
in
happen,
boss.
though.
I mean, why not? Why can't it happen? That's
Well,
that's
they
a
said they weren't gonna
traditional.
do it with Colicoid, so
That doesn't.
doubt we'll
I
see
know
it with
why
Red
they're not
Reaper.
going to do it with Colicoid, because it's a dumb puzzle. flashpoint.
Nobody it's retarded.
Red Reaper is not a puzzle flashpoint. It's actually very standard.
And
I
Red
like
Reaper
Red- I
ties in
like Red
nicely
Reaper
with.
a lot.
It ties in nicely with the lore too. The Red Reaper one. It was a nice lead up.
I mean, it doesn't really tie into this expansion, but neither
No,
neither
but
did like
it was relevant at its time though.
yeah. But like, Aethys didn't tie into Hut Cartel, and it got bumped up. They can leave Colicoid in the dustbin for all anybody cares. Like, whatever.
Flashpoints can be just left in the dustbin for. I never do that into the first week.
I do them, like, but only for,
I mean, there's
for conquest
conquest,
reasons
yeah.
and shit like that.
I just hope they never implement Nightmare flashpoints, because that would piss me off.
I would
Why?
love Nightmare flashpoints.
I feel like it would be totally unnecessary to waste resources on something like that.
But
The
you're
only
considering
reason-
resources and gains out of a flashpoint when
That's
that's not
Yeah,
what
what
they're
gear
there
would
for.
it drop? It would drop, what, like hard mode rated operations gear?
To me,
Yeah,
you
back
make
when,
something
yeah.
good come out of it, or make it a way to make money or something.
I mean, Lost Island dropped Ricotta, so
See, I'm fine with the concept of Nightmare flashpoints. My only issue is that it does take away development time from operations.
Yeah, exactly. It's something
Period.
that would be
It takes away
fun. It's
development.
just it's lower
We-
priority than other
we
stuff.
complained on end, and just about every other rating guild did too, about the whole let's wait a year between tiers. Now, they said specifically that they don't want to let that ever happen again to us, aka we won't spend another year waiting for a new raid. But at the same time, the time you give to Nightmare flashpoints is time you take away from new raids.
Yeah, he's got a point. I mean, it's the same team that does flashpoints that does operations.
That is the problem with wanting a perfect world and everything you want. You lose things and you don't realize it until you've lost them.
I mean, I think Nightmare flashpoints would be fun, assuming you got like a reward people cared about, so that people wanted to do it. I just don't think I'm willing to give up operations content for it. So, I mean, that's where I come down. Two new tacticals. Who the hell knows what those are going to be? I assume they're just going to be directly related to the story. And let's see.
one where you kill Darth Maul, and one where you kill Satio.
I
Oh
hope
god,
not.
we better not kill Darth
No.
Maul. I love
In a
him.
I'm expecting
flashpoint.
Besley to come kill you.
I think
Shut your
BioWare.
mouth. Don't you touch Mark.
I don't know if BioWare realizes how popular Darth Maul is. Maybe they do, but it doesn't seem like they play him up too much, which they
He's
really
a
should.
badass, dude. They need to.
Okay. I've run through all the show notes, so we actually came out way ahead of schedule than I thought we were gonna hit. I guess we talked really fast. Does anybody? We can like go into free time. We can do Q&A. Whatever you guys
Talk
want to do.
about Conquest.
There's nothing to talk about with Conquest. Conquests are going to be dead.
Oh, but they're in. Rishi and Yavin 4, man.
Oh,
They've got
big
to add him
money.
into the cycle.
I've got
Founder
a
of Yavin 4.
Oh, poison
I've
skills
got a
deal
touchy
20% more
topic
damage on someone for
we
fire.
can talk about
but
for a
that's
second.
alright.
What are you talking about, Besley?
Oh no, I held down my push to talk.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm playing Diablo 3.
Goof.
Wow.
Never
Freaking
cross
goof.
streams.
All right.
I have a touchy topic.
Go ahead.
I tend to see nothing but rants on the forums all the time about, or at least people bring them up to me about everyone complaining about dual spec. And in my head, I'm always confused every time I hear this because I'm like, you have infinite specs with the press of a button. That's cheaper and freer than most MMOs I've ever seen in my life. The only downside I see is I don't have a button that swaps all my bars instantly for me. That is the one downside I see. But I know everyone has different opinions on that.
No, I feel the same way you do. It's like field respec is a billion times better than dual spec ever was.
It's going to be even easier 3.0 when you're not assigning shit anymore.
Yeah. No,
The
I'm
only-
very happy
the
with
only-
that.
The only thing about what people have talked about for dual spec or what they want from something like dual spec that even matters to me as someone who respecs between almost every fight in this tier is that instead of me hitting 40 plus buttons, I hit a button and then I get the specific utility stuff slotted in and then they change my bars. I guess that's cool, but me going from 40 something buttons to 7 buttons is going to take me no time at all. And the quick bars never took me that much time. It was like I switched 3 things around.
It's
So
not
if
like
you
you can
know
dual
your bars,
spec
it's not a problem.
in combat. So
Yeah.
it's not like dual spec means that you get a free combat swap.
I mean, if we're talking about switching combat during raid, in my opinion, if you have dual spec where you hit a button and then you switch your entire spec and on top of that your bars are switched, then
No,
I don't want anything to do with dual
That's
spec at
never
that
going to
point.
be a thing.
Because like right now, if you want to respec, you can absolutely do that to make certain phases easier on the raid. But in doing that, you have to find a place during the raid itself to take the time to respec, and it feels like you're just going to make the fight considerably easier if you could just press a button and everything is done for you.
I think that
They
they're
talked
gonna
about
take
on
it-
stream
Yeah.
that they were going to remove you couldn't do it in combat anymore.
Yeah, I think that they're not going to allow us to do it since it'll be so easy.
Yeah,
Uh,
and if you don't allow it to do it in combat, then I don't see why it has to be a one button and everything's done situation, except
Exactly.
for quality of life. And the only quality of life thing I could say is I can understand them changing your bars for it. Like trying to save, like being able to save your quick bar profiles, like not just like what it looks like in the interface, but actually save what's in them makes
And
sense to me.
keybind. Oh my god,
Yeah.
please keybinds.
See,
When
that's what's weird to me. Keybinds are saved on your computer on a per character, and quick bars can be saved via server, yet they can't have both be saved in the same system, and they can't have abilities be saved. That's what's weird to me.
When you boil it down, though, people getting that upset over no dual spec, they're like raising hell about a process that takes 45 seconds, 30 seconds at the longest. So it's a silly argument.
It's just, especially with the new system, it's not worth the development time.
So that brings up another issue to me is if the factor is combat and not necessarily inside the instance, what stops the stealth classes or those that can drop combat from still doing it? And if so, does that fix now mean that there's no such thing as stealth resist?
They said something along the lines of, when they were talking about it, they said specifically in an active raid environment. And the way that they said active raid environment made me feel as
When
though
there's combat.
stealthing does not mean that you personally can now do whatever you want.
Yeah.
I would hope, because right now, if you stealth, you can switch out enhancements and mods while stealth in combat. I would like it if, in this expansion, we cannot do that, and if you stealth, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden you get to respec because you're stealth. Like I would like it to be pretty clear cut.
Yeah, I understand that stealth resing is a skill of knowing the fight, but I think it's a workaround for things that you should not be allowed to recover from, if you must have one to recover.
I'm gonna like reassure y'all. There's already the functionality to detect if the raid encounter is in progress, and you know that because you can't zone in and you can't take the in-instance res. So they're just gonna apply that flag, and when people stealth and try to like game the system like you're describing, it's just not gonna work.
Yep.
Although I don't know if I'm against stealth reses, because while on one hand you're inevitably making the fight more recoverable, which in Nightmare I know a lot of people complain about it's too easy to recover. On another hand, healers already feel like their job is too easy, and stealth resing is something where in some fights, yes, it's easy. Like you can stealth res people during Carl Lewis of Raptus, but in Council there is a little bit of finesse to it. You're not just going to randomly stealth out. You have to like make sure that certain things are not happening in the time where you're stealthing, and I just feel like it will make their job easier than it already is if they don't have that ability. I
I
guess.
don't necessarily know
Doesn't
it'll make their job
respecting-
easier. It's just one more aspect that it's not going to be taken into account now.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be fine
In
with
my
no
mind-
stealth reses. I just worry like about what it does to healing. It's just like, oh, okay, well, it's already easy to heal, and we don't have to be called upon to recover. Like, it just seems like another thing to make it easier, because almost every healer that we talk to complains about healing, that there's nothing to do, and that they basically AFK at this point.
Well, now they do because there's nothing to heal. But I mean, before there was something to heal.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna like take seriously complaints that there's nothing to heal now, because healing
It's healing
healing specifically was made easier in the last patch. So whatever.
It's certainly,
I'll give them
it-
something to heal.
certainly that's not the argument being made about pre-nerf or Palace, right?
I wouldn't think so.
The argument actually was being made, because if you remember pre-nerf, CAC would stop healing because there was nothing to do, and for about 70% of the fight, Devasta would solo heal while CAC put up roughly 11 to 1200 DPS. That was pre-nerf. There are
But
some
you're
fights where the
referencing-
healing... No, I'm referencing, this is Nightmare. There are Nightmare healers in other guilds. This isn't just CAC. Like the Zorus healers complained about it too. There were other healers that complained about not having to do anything. Calpheus had nothing to heal. Tyrants did have a consistent amount of healing required, but, I mean, Bestia did not have a consistent amount of healing required past, 2 minutes, 20 seconds? Raptus was easy to heal outside of the challenges, and Council, once you had the strat down and you had people spec'd into the right things, as long as people did their jobs, it wasn't hell. It's just when people messed up, all of a sudden there would be buffed things and things you had to recover from.
Yeah,
But, I think the point is, if you're doing the fight right, it makes the fight considerably easy to heal, and I feel like healers want the fight to be difficult for them, even if other people are doing things correctly.
in my mind, that is a healer's job, is to fix what someone broke. And if you give them no leeway, as in, you're talking about like the best healers in the game that have like wrote the book on how to heal. So if the best healers in the game feel they're having to heal at 100%, that means content is not doable by anyone that is remotely a little bit away from them in skill.
But Nightmare
So
should
if-
be hard. I'm
Nightmare
talking
should be
about
hard.
Nightmare. I'm about Nightmare. I'm not talking about hard mode. Hard mode, you want to make it to where the majority of people that can pass mechanics should be able to kill it. I get that. Nightmare, I don't really get that.
I'm
But
pretty sure that
that
their
would take
design
away from
philosophy.
If
They-
that
they-
was the
they
case,
have a certain
there would have to be no
threshold.
mitigation.
They have a certain ratio of the player base that they want to be able to pass Nightmare, and it's not just the best players in the world, like the very best.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know you want Nightmare to be that way. It's not going to be that way. If you
I
want
don't
a
think
challenge
anyone-
if you want a challenge like that, go play like Dota or
I don't
Counter-Strike.
think that it needs to be like that for every class, but when specific classes of players don't enjoy this game because their job is inherently too easy. For instance, nobody wants to tank this game. Like, nobody wants to tank. And yes, there are random people who will, but and a lot of healers are starting to say there's nothing to heal, I'm just going to DPS, or they'll just complain about not having anything to heal. Like DPS, as much as people have been complaining about rotations, we have something to do. It may not be difficult on some fights, but there's at least something to do. For certain classes, there's nothing to do.
But there are windows of DPS, and there are windows of healing. That's like saying like on Raptus, when he bubbles, you have nothing to do as a DPS. That's like saying, well, you should make it harder. I should have to go kill an ad to break his bubble. Well, sure, that's an additional mechanic that could cause you having more things to do. But there are windows of when you must heal and you must DPS.
I mean, you can make it easier or more difficult on Raptus by making the Enrage a hard Enrage instead of we can survive this for a minute. That already makes it harder on DPS without getting rid of him bubbling. You can make healing harder in Raptus outside of the healing challenge by having him do more damage, period, outside of healing challenge. There are ways to make it harder without having to fundamentally change the fight. You just have to decide that you want certain mechanics to matter.
Agreed, and I think part of those mechanics are you have RNG in there as far as there is mitigation. If you mitigate everything in the world, your healers have nothing to do regardless. If you have bad RNG and you mitigate nothing, you die, and then the healers go, well, obviously you're not good enough. And it's like, well, things went wrong. And if you have a portion of a fight built so tough and so hard that if you don't mitigate something, or you must be able to mitigate something, you limit the types of the ways to gear and the types of specs and the types of tanks or healers you take. And now you can no longer build around your player base, but you must build around specific mechanics. As in, there is no leeway. You must have 2 Sins on this fight. You must have a Merc and a Op, or you must have 2 Sorks. And I think that takes away from the flexibility that is and should be MMOs.
I feel like if they balance the damage and they balance the healing correctly, like, for instance, make Sorks not saying they weren't viable, but more viable than they were as healers, and if they reworked like how even DPS classes could be, I don't really think that we'll have the same situation where people are just stack city, but that's just my view.
I mean, I have sympathy for people who are looking for a greater challenge. I just don't think that you're playing the right game.
That's fair.
I know like the top guild wants to be the specialist snowflake, and they don't want anybody else to be able to do what they do. That's not going to happen. Yeah. I don't think you're ever going to convince. In fact, I know for a fact you will never convince BioWare to do anything like that for you, to make sure that nobody else can clear the content you can clear. Because why would they waste their time making something like that for one group of 8 people?
I think really they've achieved at this point with the Nightmare, it is beyond healable for the average population. It's not even touchable for the average population. So even if the elite population is chewing it up, they've still clearly segregated it from the player base.
Yeah. I don't know what the threshold is, but I bet they hit it. Or maybe they even came under it, because this last tier of Nightmare was a big step up from SMB and TFB.
Although the way that they do Nightmare Power ROM, they could easily make it harder during that window.
I'm saying they have a threshold that they want to be able to clear it during Nightmare Power.
They don't want 2 guilds clearing the content they release.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fair. I just don't, I do not think that if you buffed it, it goes from, 30 some odd guilds killing Brontas pre-nerf to 2.
Also,
I don't think that's something that would happen. You'd have to very heavily buff to get it to where only 2 guilds kill something.
I don't think you would. Also, the things you're asking for, like you just want shit to hit harder, that's whatever. That doesn't sound very fun to me.
Well, you're not a healer. I don't expect you to find it fun.
I mean, it doesn't sound interesting. Like, just slide up the damage number. Ooh. God.
Well, no, because I can't contextualize mechanics that don't exist in the game yet.
Sure.
I can only go off of what mechanics exist in the game so far. that's kind of like if I was like mentioning 16 man, I wouldn't even bring up like the like relative balancing of numbers. I would just be like, well, if I wanted to tune 16 man, there would be more Infernos on Tyrants. There would be more than one person being SOA'd on a SOA in Council. Like, those are the things that I could say between 8 and 16, but I can't really like be like, oh, 8 man would be harder if, and then I'd create a mechanic, because I don't have that sort of creativity with game development ideas.
I mean, there's a lot of easy ways to do it, like more Mortal Strike effects and shit like that. Rather, I mean, something more creative than just make the bosses hit harder. And honestly, like, making the bosses hit harder is like that becomes a game of RNG a lot of the
Yeah,
time.
I mean, even now, if you have a couple of bad rolls, it like pre-nerf, like if you had a couple of bad rolls, you were liable to die, even with the greatest healers in the game. So, yeah, there's not really a bigger threshold for that.
Now, you could change... here's a way that you could make it interesting for these people, and this is a different way to go about it. I'm going to bring up WoW again. It's just what I do. It's just going to keep happening. WoW changed from big-ass spike healing to triage healing, which means that they made healer resources more depletable. They greatly increased health pools, but they lowered spike damage. So basically, it was triage, right? So you have to keep an eye on your resources, but you have to keep the tank above thresholds, and you have to make sure your DPS don't drop below certain thresholds. But it's not like you're topping everybody off all the time. That, I think, would interest a lot of people more than the current system, where it's just like spike heal, spike heal. I mean, I don't know. Do you have any
And the
opinions
better
on
they
that?
are, the better time they can actually do something, though. They can do damage, which does change fights.
Yeah.
I mean, that is at least filler time. I mean, I'm used to a lot of MMOs where healers just didn't ever touch damage because why risk it? In this game, I feel that I'm playing with such good healers that they know exactly what they can risk because they're that good.
Whoever's talking is breaking up. Am I breaking up? Can someone talk?
No, you're fine.
Okay, good.
It's true on my screen, that's lagging.
Anyway, I mean, that was at least the design philosophy that they set out at the beginning of the last expansion. I don't know how successful it was, but it's at least an interesting idea that this development team could look at. I mean, if you want to be honest, they're taking a lot of their cues from WoW anyway. Like, this discipline system is just the new WoW talent system by another name, and with a few minor differences. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with imitating the most successful MMO ever. Anyway, any other topics anybody wants to bring up? Like I said, we ran through all my show notes.
I'm good.
You're good?
Good talk.
Dom?
I'm trying to remember, what day is Pirate Day? Because we could totally have fun
Pirate.
and Rishi with that.
Pirate Day. Didn't that already happen this year?
Yeah,
Pretty
I think
sure
it
it did.
happened like a month ago, right?
Yeah. Rishi's supposed to be this pirate haven, if anybody is wondering. There's also like a pirate hat that I saw, like a tri-corner looking thing.
They even
Pirate
had
hat
some
is
missiles,
so goofy.
so I'm looking forward to
Yeah.
that. I want to go get my pirate on.
Most hats in this game are goofy.
This is true. This is Silly Hats Only the video game, so...
It's time to turn in the trash can crown for pirate hat.
Okay. If nobody's got any other topics, I think that's a wrap. So, this was State of the Galaxy episode 6. We're going to be streaming again on Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. Central Daylight Time. That'll be farm stream. If we get another info drop for the expansion, the next episode of State of the Galaxy will be same time next week. If we don't get another big info drop, and I doubt that that's going to happen, I think they're planning on doing a lot more information on combat changes this week. So we're definitely going to have a lot to talk about. Anyway, if they don't do another info drop, it's going to be in 2 weeks. But until then, that's all for Death and Taxes. Thank you all for watching. See you all Tuesday.